All right. Well, welcome back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. You are listening to the Dr. Louis Sandoval Show. Always a pleasure to be here with you. Today, we're talking about a heavy topic called satanic ritual abuse. And before the break, we were talking about, can we befriend a priest? Can we be friends one-on-one with a priest? Of course, it all depends on making sure that we keep moral certitude. And what do I mean by that? We got to keep our morality. We got to remember that there is a sense of respect that we have to have where we don't want to make inappropriate jokes. Can I be a friend with a priest? Absolutely. In fact, I have a lot of priest friends. Granted, I went to the seminary and I know them. But if you're a man, you have to have a certain respect for females. And we teach this in the Catholic Church. We have to present ourselves a certain way. We have to remember that there is a difference, men and women. We can influence each other. And if you're a woman, you want to have that same respect for a priest. Does that mean you can't befriend them? No. But there's always got to be a sense of modesty as well. I remember in the priesthood, we talked about custody of the eyes. Why? Because what we see is going to influence us. The eyes are the windows to the soul. So we would always say, if you're going to be a priest, if you're going to be a seminarian, and I think of this as a married man, there has to be custody of the eyes. I have to be careful what I allow into my eyes because I don't want anything but my wife to be in my heart. And there's temptation out there. There's always temptation out there. We have to remember that. We have to bring back that art of modesty in our church, where if you're a female, I would say, if you're going to approach a priest, you're going to talk to a priest, what am I wearing? What am I doing? Am I being too casual? Should I remember that there is a sacrament there and that the priest is practicing custody of the eyes? Am I helping him do that? At the same time, it's helping me remember that I want to keep my modesty as well. Why? Because we don't want there to be abuse either way. And by abuse, I mean, it's very abusive for a woman to say, you know what, I'm going to just wear whatever I want and you better not react in any way. You better not have a natural reaction. That's not fair either. That's very controlling, right? There's got to be a certain sense of mutual respect and modesty. Why is this important? We need to focus now on the first part of what we were talking about with this whole phrase, satanic ritual abuse, because a lot of times we get distracted by the satanic part and we assume that there's a very specific ritual abuse. Now, ritual abuse or abuse in general is just abuse. What your focus is on it, well, that all depends. But it's kind of like saying the word justice versus saying the word social justice. Well, a lot of people you hear say, I believe in social justice. Well, okay, but what about justice otherwise? I mean, shouldn't we just say what's just in all situations? Where is the justice coming from? What does social justice mean? Oh, I get it. You're talking about justice when it comes to social work type issues. But what about justice when it doesn't come to social work type issues? What about financial justice? What about family justice? What about, there's all different kinds of outliers and titles we can give to the word justice, but that takes away from the fact that we should just try to be just across the board. It's the same way when we talk about abuse or ritual abuse. People say satanic ritual abuse. Well, it brings up this image that there is a cult, that there is a black mass happening, that there are devil worshipers, and that is true. That is a very specific type of abuse. But you don't want to belittle the other abuses that people experience. Why? Because if you want to look at it that way, with priests are abusing little kids, that's satanic ritual abuse. Why? It didn't involve necessarily a cult. It didn't necessarily involve a coven or a black mass. But what are we using? We're abusing people. And from the level of the priesthood, anything you do is going to be satanic. It might not be that you are directly doing something to worship the devil. It might just be that we're falling into temptation, because how many times has that happened to us? Any time that there's an abuse, there's something negative there. There's a dark entity there. Does it mean that the abuser was directly trying to worship the devil in this case? Not necessarily. Does it lead us in that direction? Of course, because at the end of the day, when we die and we have to come to the gates of heaven, anytime there was an abuse, it's going to go towards the gates of hell. You do not allow abuse in heaven. It cannot go into the gates of heaven. So if you think about it that way, any abuse is satanic because it's going to lead anybody to hell. Does that mean that everything was specifically, literally there to worship the devil? Not necessarily. This particular case where they were worried that this priest was going to be part of a coven or something, I'd be curious to read more into it, to find out more information, to get a little bit more proof, but it didn't seem that way, although he was blaspheming the Eucharist. So that's a very real door that can open to the gates of hell, even if he wasn't trying to do that. He might have not even thought about that. He might have just been thinking, how can I abuse this gal or use her for my personal end? And he might not have even been thinking about the devil necessarily. Well, gee, Dr. Sandoval, how can you not be thinking about it? We do it all the time. Every time we sin, I would say, I'm not thinking about the devil. I'm not thinking that I want to go to hell. I'm just having a moment of weakness. I'm having a moment where I'm human. I don't want to go to hell. Was it a satanic sin? Well, not necessarily. It was a sin and it's going to offend God. So it's going to lead me in the direction of hell, but it doesn't have to be specifically satanic. Because for that matter, we could say, well, there's animal ritual abuse, or there's, spousal ritual abuse, or there's child ritual abuse. But anytime that there's ritual abuse, it's the same thing. We've got to ask ourselves, what was the specific end that the person had in mind? Was it cruelty to animals, cruelty to a minor, or was it really that they wanted to, in fact, worship the devil? These things happen, but we always want to make sure that we have the proof there, because it's very easy to label everything as satanic ritual abuse, even if it's not necessarily directly related to that. Important to consider.